what really happened to my father. No one believed me when I told them what was it that I happened to my father. Even after that famous YouTuber went missing for a week in the same stretch of woods, but that was the first to be taken. My father and I had decided to go camping to help celebrate his promotion at work. He was a seasoned camper, but I was relatively new to it all. We spent most of the day riding our dirt bikes through a new rail and a few of the trails towards the bottom of the mountain. But when the sun started to set down, we decided to make camp for the night. We set our tents and I gathered some firewood with that. We got a pretty decent sized fire burning before eating dinner and toasting some marshmallows. That is, to be honest, my favorite part about camping with that. When the sun was completely gone, I was genuinely afraid of how many stars were there. Being from the city, I was only used to seeing a few stars in the night sky, but out there, away from civilization, it was as if I could see the entire galaxy, and it was rather unsettling. Further putting me on edge, the sounds of the various nocturnal insects buzzing and chirping was a lot louder than it was back home. There weren't any howling whoops, but there was the occasional owl hoot. Ooh, 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 ooh. Even the trees groaned a little, swaying in the gentle breeze that blew between them. Dad decided it would be fun to tell a ghost story, and for one of the stories, he had to act out one of the scenes. He stood beside a tree, but as he acted out the scene, I noticed something was carved into the bark of the tree. Dad? Dad, what do you think that is? I asked, standing and pointing at the strange symbols carved on the tree bark. He frowned a little, disappointed that I wasn't very interested in his ghost story. He turned his attention to where I was pointing and continued to frown. Well, boy, I'm not sure. I kinda noticed it before, but I guess my brain automatically assumed it was just one of those Jack loves Jane messages, kind of like, the ones that teenagers and couples like to carve into the trees. After saying that, my dad leaned down a little and stood in a way that allowed the light from the fire to flicker off the tree. I followed suit. The symbols had been organized in a diamond pattern, carved a few inches deep into the bark of the tree. And it looks like a tool was used to carve this. Dad said, running his finger along the inside of one of the larger symbols. Dad jerked his hand back and sucked on the tip of his finger. He chuckled a little. Well, I was going to say smooth, but it cut me, so I guess I'm a little wrong. As Dad spoke his sentence, the insects stopped buzzing and chirping, and the owls stopped hooting, and the gentle breeze that blew through the trees turned into a strong gust of wind. The wind blew some dust into both of our eyes, and we tried to clear them with the back of our hands. We went back into the fire and sat down, but Dad didn't stop rubbing his eyes. We didn't speak for a few minutes, but when Dad stopped rubbing and looked at me, I gasped. and I almost scooted back.
I can't see. I can't see. Son, help me, I can't see.
He said, blinking a few more times.
Dad, your eyes. Your eyes.
I started, pointing at him. I had expected his eyes to be a little red from irritation, but instead, both of his eyes were black now. At first, I thought they were gone, but as he moved them around trying to look at things, I could really tell that they were still there, just completely devoid of color.
Dad? Dad, I think we need to go to the hospital or something. Your eyes are completely black, like they are covered in soot.
Ugh, my god, yeah. My eyes. That would make sense, I guess. I think maybe that gust of wind blew some object into my eyes. I can't see a thing.
Okay, here. Dad, I'll help you.
I said to my dad, standing up and moving towards him. I grabbed his arms and I helped him to his feet. My mind raced with possibilities when it comes to getting helped. I knew I had to take him to the hospital. Since we rode separate dirt bikes to the campground, there was no way that he would be able to ride without any vision. It was possible that we could walk the bikes out and I could guide him, but that would take forever.
Dad, maybe we can walk the bikes out? I can help you so you don't run into anything. Does that...
But before I could finish my sentence, I glanced at the tree with the symbols, and I became petrified. There, on the bark, about a foot above the symbols, was a set of eyes, glaring at us. There were no eyelids, just two eyeballs wedged into the bark, as if someone had carved out two holes and pushed them in.
What? Wait, son. What is it? Why did you stop?
Dad said, bending down to rub his leg. He hit his leg against the motorbike, but it took me a minute or so to formulate a response. It took a few steps back, and I pulled him with me, and the gaze of the eyes followed us.
Dad, there are eyes on the tree.
I whispered, as if the eyes would hear me and get angry.
What? Like potato eyes? Like the white things that sprout on potatoes?
Before I could answer, Dad winced and dropped to the ground. He started rubbing his leg even more, and I lifted up his pant leg. And sure enough, like his eyes, his leg was pitch black, including the hair that would normally have been brown. I looked at the tree again, and to my horror, I saw that now it had a leg towards the base of the trunk. I looked at the eyes again, and though it was hard to confirm due to the low lighting and distance, I swore that they were my father's eyes. But instead of being filled with love and compassion like my father's usually were, these eyes were devoid of emotion, just staring at me like a spooky wooden doll. Right after that, Dad started rubbing his other leg, and I stood up, stepping back. I felt guilty about it later, but my thoughts shifted toward personal preservation as I questioned whether whatever was happening to him was contagious. He started rubbing his torso and his arms, and a few seconds later, the tree took those body parts as well.
No, 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 no!
I started saying as Dad started rubbing his face and his scalp. Then he stopped moving, becoming a completely black, motionless figure beside the campfire. My heart was racing a mile a minute as I looked at the tree. Embedded in the trunk was the image of my father, complete with his face, which was now twisted into a morbid grin. I shook what used to be my father a few times just in case, never taking my eyes off the tree. When he gave no response, I grabbed the keys to both bikes and I hopped on mine. I didn't care about our camping supplies or I didn't even bother putting out the fire. Instead, I turned the key in the ignition, sighing in relief when it started. Movement on the tree caught my eye, and I watched in terror as the embedded body strained against the bark. It pulled most of itself out and was only connected at its back by a few twigs and bits of bark for a while before finally breaking free. It never blinked, glaring at me and smirking. It was like a 3D model or something. When it took a step forward, I twisted back the throttle and I sped off, daring a glance every second or so, but happily I had taken both keys, so it at least couldn't pursue me on the bike. I almost biffed it a few times, but I managed to make it back to the main road, and then back to my house a couple of hours later. It was the middle of the night, but I banged on the door until Mom opened up. She brought me inside and calmed me down enough for me to try and formulate what I had just witnessed. I tried explaining exactly what happened, but it was too far-fetched for her to believe. She kept shaking her head and saying I was in shock, asking why I had left my father at the campsite. A firm knock at the door pulled both of our attentions, and Mom opened it. There, at the threshold, was the beast from the forest that had assumed my father's identity. It didn't say a word, but Mom fell on it, embracing it as if she hadn't seen her husband in years. It locked eyes with me, and my heart nearly beat its way out of my chest. I tried to convince Mom that my dad was dead, and the thing that had come home that night was a monster with unknown intentions, but she refused to listen. I even managed to take the cops out to the campsite the next morning, but Dad's body was gone. The symbols were still carved into that tree, but now there was an additional symbol above the others. Since the cops found nothing and Mom refused to believe me, I had no choice but to move out. A few others have gone missing, and I know that they were taken by the same creature, and one day I'll figure out a way to fight them. Until then, the best thing I can do is spread awareness.